Thanks to you at home for joining us this hour as well. Happy to have you here. Anybody who tells you they know what comes next, anybody who tells you they know how things are going to go from here on out is wrong. I mean, they might end up accidentally being right, but I mean, to the extent that anybody is expressing any certainty to you right now about what's going to happen next, that person is wrong to be so certain. Because what we are going through right now as a country is unprecedented, which literally means we have not done it before, which means there is no previous experience to extrapolate from. That might give us a hint as to where this is going next. I mean, even when it comes to just the basic fate of this presidency, as of this morning, you might have seen the national headlines, these super sober, super sure headlines about how if we know anything about the impact of the Robert Mueller testimony yesterday, it's that it definitely didn't move the needle one bit on the question of impeachment. If it did anything, it convinced Democrats once and for all that they definitely aren't going to pursue impeachment. It killed that off forever. I mean, those were the headlines all over the papers today. As of this morning, as of this afternoon, oh, look, there's 5 new members of the House who have just come out in favor of an impeachment inquiry, including Katherine Clark, who is in the Democratic House leadership. You might have seen also initial reporting today about how Democrats held a meeting in the wake of Mueller's testimony. And at that meeting, they decided that, they would stick to the same old plan and the dynamics among the Democrats would stick to the same old script. Same dynamic the Democrats have been in for months. They definitely won't pursue impeachment proceedings against the president, no matter what. They don't even want to plan for it. No way. It's done. In fact, further detailed reporting about that same meeting later today suggests that what the Democrats were really doing at that meeting was, for the first time, talking about the nuts and bolts, step-by-step chronological logistics of how exactly they would do it if they were going to do it, including basic questions like how exactly their impeachment articles would be conveyed to the U.S. Senate if the House did, in fact, pass articles of impeachment and it was time to move on to the next step. That's the kind of stuff that they were talking about, which is not at all the same old page they were stuck on before. So all of this sort of instant sage punditry and instant news analysis in the world that's trying to be very reassuring now. Don't worry, nothing will change. Everything is the same. We know exactly how this is all going to go from here on out. I mean, I understand the sort of impulse to be soothing. I understand the impulse to broadcast that sort of thing. I think it sort of feels good, particularly in the Beltway press. But the facts on the ground do seem to be shifting much faster than that kind of tut-tutting analysis has been able to keep up with, even just over the course of today. Now, let me just give you one other sort of case study from our current news cycle that, if nothing else, should persuade you to keep your mind open to the possibility of something deeply weird happening at any time. That should close your mind only to the possibility that there's somebody out there who knows what happens next. I mean, we are living in deeply weird times. This is a deeply weird presidency. Things that touch this presidency, things that happen around this presidency, particularly in times of stress, they have an almost otherworldly propensity to go weird, even if they start off normal. I mean, and that's not necessarily a good or bad thing. It's just weird. For example, this is my case study. Do you know what the president did the night before Robert Mueller's testimony? Right, we know the president appeared to be a little stressed out about Mueller's forthcoming testimony. He was tweeting angrily that day and that night about the logistics of the Mueller hearing and the fact that Mueller's deputy was going to be there. That's not fair, very unfair, should not be allowed. I mean, we know that the president was very wound up about it the night before Mueller's testimony happened. Well, what did he actually do the night before Mueller testified? Turns out he had a public event. He spoke to a right-wing youth group. And I think that you have probably not seen this footage. I mean, maybe you were there. Statistically speaking, I'm guessing you are not a member of a right-wing youth group watching me right now, although if you are, welcome. Hope you stay. But we've got the tape, and it's sort of, I think this is a remarkable thing. It's sort of a crowd's eye view of what it was like to be in the audience of that right-wing youth group on Mueller Eve, awaiting the on-stage presence of the President of the United States.
That ambition was unmistakably prevalent in young Donald's DNA.
He apparently loved military school. He liked the kind of out front, I think, competitiveness of it. There were so many different ways that you could excel and get medals and ribbons.
Donald Trump thrived, rising in rank, and he was socially popular with men and women. He also gravitated towards sports, or rather, winning in sports.
So, this is the right-wing teenagers group. It's like a pro-Trump youth group. And they're watching this hype video about how Donald Trump was such a popular boy with both boys and girls. And he had such good DNA, and he was always winning at everything. He got so many ribbons and stuff. And this goes on for a long time. This is a long hype video. Ultimately, they get to the part right after this where they're kind of trying to give like an exciting war movie vibe to the room. And so I'm going to show you this next part. I'm just going to stop talking here for a second so you can see and hear what this was like for the Trump youth group. Also, just keep in mind, this is the kind of event the President of the United States is doing now. And then there's, right, it's like everybody goes crazy and they start President Donald Trump's throbbing on the screen. And the crowd gets all hyped up, and then they get him as hyped as they possibly can. There he is! Oh my God! He's in silhouette. He's not lit up. He's not really him. There's the lights. It's him. The president walks out into the stage. See, I told you things could get even weirder than you thought they could get. But wait, this is even weirder than you think it is. Because this is what the event looks like once he finally gets going. Okay, you see there's like the throbbing name there to the right? See how there's a presidential seal there? Presidential seal there, right, with his name. Then there's another presidential seal on the left side of your screen as we're looking at it. The one with his name over it, that's the seal of the President of the United States. On the left side of the screen, do you notice that one looks a little bit different? Washington Post was first to report on this. I'm not sure how long it would have taken anybody else to notice that this happened, how many other people were looking at this footage, right? But turns out there's a guy who runs a website called One Term Donnie, which is an anti-Trump website. You can buy like anti-Trump merchandise and posters and T-shirts or whatever. That guy designed a Trump-specific satirical version of the seal of the President of the United States. Okay, for comparison purposes, the real one is on the left. This is the one that was projected underneath the president's name at that event. The one that was projected on the other side of the screen, behind the president as he prowled the stage at this Trump youth group event the night before Mueller's testimony, that's the one on the right. There are subtle differences. First thing, look at the head. You'll notice in the Trump one, the eagle has two heads instead of one. It's pretty much exactly the two heads from the state seal of the Russian Federation, the two-headed, now look down at the feet of the double-headed eagle. On the real seal, you see on the right, that's the talon of the eagle holding 13 arrows representing the 13 colonies. In the seal that was shown behind the president on Mueller Eve, it's a little bit hard to tell at first glance what that is. You can tell it's not arrows. In the terms of the One Term Donnie website merchandise producer, he describes what's in the clutches of that eagle there as, quote, little don-dons, child-sized set of golf clubs for those tiny, tiny hands. So no arrows, tiny golf clubs. In the eagle's other little talon, where from the real seal you would expect to see the eagle holding an olive branch, the Trump-specific seal is instead holding a bunch of cash. And then there's two other alterations I will draw your attention to. One is the shield, sort of the breastplate for the eagle. On the real presidential seal, that breastplate is red and white stripes down below and a blue field up top. On the one that was designed specifically for Trump and that was projected behind him for his Mueller Eve Trump youth appearance, there's still the red and white stripes on the bottom, but the blue field above the red and white stripes is a little different. See how it's got those little icons there? Those are hammer and sickles. Like from the Soviet Union, right. I mean, just in case the two-headed eagle from the seal of the Russian Federation was not on the nose enough, it's the hammer and sickles. And then the last alteration you should notice is the words written on the banner over the eagle's head. On the real presidential seal, of course, it's E pluribus unum, out of many, one, motto of the United States. On the Trump-specific presidential seal, which, again, the president stood in front of for more than an hour the night before Mueller testified, that one actually says 45 es un titere. Titere. That's not Latin, that's Spanish, and it means 45 is a puppet. Now, this does not seem to have been an anti-Trump trick or hack. It wasn't like a rogue projectionist at the Marriott in D.C. as Trump was speaking to this Trump youth group. This does seem to have just been a thing that the Trump right-wing youth group got wrong. They accidentally did that and put that up there. And apparently the White House advance operations are sufficiently porous that this sort of thing can just happen. And who knows, blame the youths. I mean, he was standing in front of that thing for more than an hour. The guy who made the one-term Donnie website is like, anybody who tells you there aren't wrinkles in the universe or unexpected hazards or opportunities ahead is just not being honest about how exactly weird this moment is in American political life. I mean, listen, if something like that can happen involving the president in person and his adoring teens, I mean, anything can happen.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.